Roland, it's great to be with you again, even virtually. As I shared with you a moment ago, I'm in Branson, Missouri at the Evangelical Press Association conference. And so we're not able to be face to face, but it's always good to see you. Thanks for being on the program again.
Likewise, and your first name is spectacular.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
So, Roland, the reason that I wanted to have this conversation, I mean, we've talked before on the
Yeah.
podcast and, about your books and about different things, but I wanted to talk today about something a little bit different. Yeah, you guys have done by you guys, I mean, you at CareNet, you guys have done a merger recently, and that caught my attention for a couple of reasons. Number one is that once I heard about the merger, it seemed really, really smart. It seemed very strategic, and I wanted you to say something about that. The other reason it caught my attention, though, is that, and I know this will sound pejorative in some ways, but being that smart and that strategic is not something that you often see in the Christian ministry space.
Okay.
And I mean, you don't hear a lot about strategic mergers. I mean, sometimes you'll hear,
Yeah.
a college is about to go down the drain, and so another college will take over its assets, or a church is about to go out of business, and they'll give their building to another church. But this doesn't seem to fit into that category. I mean, these are not two organizations that are about to go down the drain. In fact, as near as I can tell, you guys appear to be thriving. So what motivated this?
Well, it's a interesting and great observation, and really, it was just sort of a God-led thing. I mean, here's the way I've been sort of thinking about this in terms of what's been happening with the pregnancy center world. So, with the availability of the abortion pill, the abortion industry, Planned Parenthood, and the others kind of in that space have been able to basically turn every bathroom, dorm room, bedroom into an abortion clinic. I mean, that's basically what they've done. They've basically disaggregated the abortion procedure from a physical space and dramatically increased, availability of abortion. And we've actually seen the number of abortions increase since Roe. So that was a long-term strategy. I'm a business guy by training, and honestly, I sort of anticipated that just because I felt like they believe that abortion is a moral and neutral consumer product that women want and need. And as a business person, what do you do when you think that way? Well, you look for every way to basically make your product available. So that's why you have cans of beer and beer on tap, and you have it in 7-Elevens and Piggly Wigglies and whatever. I mean, I guess they still Piggly Wigglies out there somewhere. But my point is that when I started in this work about 13 years ago, my sense was they're going to try to figure out a way to disaggregate the product that they provide from the physical space. And when I heard about the abortion pill, it really kind of generate that. And frankly, that's even tied to why I have this perspective about the role of the church, because wherever there is, a bathroom, a bedroom, or whatever, there's not a church that's very far from that. So having a church-based response. So anyway, because of that, you end up with these things basically I'm calling pregnancy center deserts. These are places where, a woman who's facing a pregnancy decision or a man who's participating, even if we talk to them, there's not a pregnancy center near them. It's only about 3,000 across the country. And so I started just wrestling with it. How do we solve that problem? That's number one. Number two, with the availability of the abortion pill, and particularly during the COVID period, where the Biden administration basically took all the restrictions off of this thing and made it as available as chiclets, if you will. I mean, essentially, you no longer had to go to an OBGYN, you no longer had to get an ultrasound, all those things. My sense was that there will be women in communities where there aren't pregnancy centers who may even have the abortion pill, but they still want to get an ultrasound. So ICU Mobile is basically sort of, in my view, sort of the leader in this space in the context of Sylvia Slifko, who started ICU Mobile about 25 years ago or so, really had this vision for medical mobile ministries for places where a woman may not be able to find a pregnancy center, be able to darken the door. And so we can basically bring this to her. So those two things came together. We started praying about how do we solve this pregnancy center desert issue, and the availability of the abortion pill and the need for ultrasounds to be more mobile. My view was this is a wonderful strategy. So we kind of approached them and started having a conversation. And the key that really brought us together was their focus on John 10:10. Their growth strategy is the same as ours in the sense that we're pro abundant life. They really are very focused on sharing the gospel, not just saving a baby, but engaging men, sharing the gospel, building a family. And so from a culture standpoint, it was just a win-win. So we started working together and then we got married. So
Yeah.
it really worked out well. Yeah.
Well, can you walk me through some of the logistics of that? Because listen, just because it's a good idea, it might result in a win-win. Um, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was going to happen. I mean, and
Yeah.
Roland, I don't need to tell you this. I love the pro-life movement. I love the pro-life space and the organizations in that movement, but there's a little bit of territoriality, a little bit
Yeah.
of turf protection, a little bit of competitiveness that goes into that. You guys kind of had to put some of that stuff aside to make this happen. Can you talk about that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all starts with trust and then and culture fit. I mean, look, it's not the technology, whether it's the business world or ministry, wherever it is. It's not technology, it's not strategy, it's not any of those things that causes mergers to not happen or when they happen not to go well. It really has to do with is there a trust there and is there a culture fit there? And frankly, from our standpoint, the unifying piece was this notion of really seeing the life issue as an on-ramp to discipleship. They've always thought that way. Sylvia Slifko always thought that way. And so her perspective was really kind of crystallized into one of the things she told me. She said, when I was thinking about this ministry, it's for the not yet born and the not yet born again.
Hmm.
The not yet born and the not yet born again. And
Wow.
unfortunately, not everyone who be ministering in the pro-life space is maybe thinking about it that way. In other words, the connection to helping someone who's facing a pregnancy decision, help them become a disciple of Jesus Christ. And so ours is, John 10:10, where Christ came that I have life and have it abundantly. In other words, that your heartbeats that are heaven born. In other words, those who are not yet born and not yet born again. So it really, that piece of it made it work. And then, with any merger or any kind of like uh, bringing together, there's like three things that you've got to have. You've got to have humility, you've got to have teachability and flexibility. And we really found that in their culture. We certainly try to manifest that in our culture. And so as we walk in humility around this notion of trying to help people become disciples of Jesus Christ in the midst of facing an unplanned pregnancy, it just created a win-win that we're still working through and making happen. So I'm not saying it's a walk in the park because it's like a marriage. You have your periods, but certainly that vision piece is what brought us together, and it's what's going to keep us together because we're focused on this notion of, again, the not yet born, not yet born again, that you might have life and have that life abundantly, which is a pro-abundant life perspective, which they shared, although they called it something different than what we do. The core of it was still the same.
Yeah. Roland, I want you to talk a little bit about the future and where you guys are going. I mean, I'm not an expert in M&A, mergers and acquisitions, but I know, I've read a few books and I've read a few articles and I've, been around. And there are usually two or three reasons for mergers. One is there's a sense that there's you need an organization needs to grow faster, that the
Yeah.
market is growing, and if they don't end up being a market leader, then they're going to get left behind. That's one possibility. Another is that there are some back office synergies that you can take costs out of the organization by coming together. A third reason, and there may be others, but I'm going to stop myself at three, is that there's just synergy, that there's a force multiplier, that one organization might be, selling cereal bowls and the other might be selling teaspoons and tablespoons, and getting the two of you together so you can sell to each other's customers is, one plus one is greater than two.
Yeah.
Um, and what was more, what was the driving force behind this merger other than the vision compatibility that you mentioned? And what do y'all see in the future for the combined organization?
Yeah, and that's a great kind of synthesis of kind of the things that go into it. But the last one that you mentioned is probably the biggest one because we have a network of 1,200 plus pregnancy centers. The core quote market for mobile units has been pregnancy centers. And so, you know, obviously ICU Mobile is being sort of outside of that space. It's, you know, it's more difficult to get in front of the pregnancy center community if you're not in it in the way that we are. So that worked really well. We want our affiliates to be mobile, to be able to reach beyond the brick and mortar. ICU Mobile was looking for a way to kind of expand dramatically and faster. And that was a key piece for us. Yes.
Roland, let me interrupt you and just if you could give me some numbers. So you got 1,200 pregnancy care centers that are members of CareNet. How many mobile units did ICU have when y'all acquired them?
So they have 41. They have 41 mobile units right now. It's called the the Fleet for Little Feet. And so you can see from our standpoint, and they've been growing. You know, they've been growing this, but you know, candidly, it's just difficult to get access to the pregnancy centers. And so what we've done is we've integrated their model into our model. So now every email that we send out, we're talking about, hey, are you going mobile? You know, at our conference, they have a big presence at our conference. And candidly, you know, from a vision standpoint, you know, we think that there's even a broader perspective for mobile units that's not necessarily connected even to pregnancy centers. So we think that it's an approach that's an important one for us to embrace.
So do you have a goal there? I mean, you're going to go from 40 to 400 or from 40 to
Well,
100 or?
Well, it's hard to know exactly. We know that there's an opportunity for us to certainly double the number of units over the next few years for sure, but we'd like to be even more aggressive than that as we get more and more pregnancy centers embracing this, but also others who may not even be in the pregnancy center space to think about mobile as a way that they can minister within their community. We can teach anybody how to have a mobile unit in their community, and so we think it's good. And here's the case in point. I mean, Planned Parenthood has mobile units. I mean, that was one of the stories that came out a couple of years ago. I guess maybe it was a year or so ago at the DNC. They brought a mobile unit to the Democratic National Convention to be able to do chemical abortions right there. So mobile is a strategy that the other side certainly understands as well. And so we think there's an enormous opportunity to grow it exponentially. The biggest challenge for us and anybody listening is funding. We'll grow as fast as we can raise the funds to be able to do that. So we're really hoping that folks within the community of faith would look at CareNet and this combination and say, yeah, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of making that ministry model something that's ubiquitous across the country. Because as I said, there are all these pregnancy center deserts where there are no pregnancy centers anywhere around. We have a national hotline where women and men call in and we refer them directly to pregnancy centers, but we were finding that there were times when there was no pregnancy center available for us to refer them to. And that's why the mobile strategy is important, because our strategy long term is to be able to actually refer them right to a mobile unit or maybe take the mobile unit to where they are. So we really want to meet them at their point of need.
And a mobile unit, it would be what, 100 grand, 150 grand more?
Yeah, they're typically like a couple $100,000, and they're equipped with an ultrasound. There's nurses on board and client advocates on board. And you have the ability to actually show the person the life right there. And it's a very compelling model because people just are drawn to that. And we also want to minister there. We want to bring men also as part of that process as well. We'd love to have them on the mobile units, because when the guy sees that life, he becomes more of an advocate for the life as opposed to an adversary. So it really gives us a capability to expand ourselves beyond the brick and mortar of a pregnancy center, and also helps us engage the church as well in terms of what we're doing.
Well, Roland, this is just really exciting. And like I said at the beginning, when I heard when I got the press release, or, I don't remember exactly how I heard it. I was like, wow, because I knew a little bit about the finances of both organizations. And like I said, you guys were not, I mean, let's stipulate for the record, all nonprofits could use more money, and all of them nobody's in great shape. But you guys were, like I say, neither one of you were circling the drain. So when I read this press release, I thought this is really smart. So I really appreciate, Roland, you taking a few minutes to kind of share with them, because I got to tell you honestly, I've got a little bit of an ulterior motive here. I think more ministries should consider strategic mergers. I think that a lot of organizations don't need to exist anymore, but they've got an installed base of donors. Maybe they've got some assets that would really be a huge benefit to another organization. And I don't think nearly enough nonprofit leaders and donors to nonprofits consider the possibility of a merger as one way of meeting the challenges of the future.
Yeah, I concur 1,000%. And again, as you know, my background, I worked for IBM, Pepsi, Goldman Sachs. So I come to this with, sort of the business orientation in terms of how God led me here. But so I see the synergies that are there, and I'm looking for ways to kind of maximize, our impact for the kingdom. And so, you got to have the humility to be able to make that happen. So we're delighted that this was able to be something that we were able to do.
Well, before we hang up, Roland, just anything else that I'm just not smart enough to ask that you want to share with our audience today?
No, I appreciate your time and your interest. I just ask folks to pray for what we're doing. I hope they'll visit care-net.org, CareNet, to see what we're doing, what this pro-abundant life perspective is about, and how it's maybe a bit different from a pro-life perspective. As you mentioned at the front end, I wrote a book called Why We Must Be Pro-Abundant Life. And that perspective is the alternative to abortion, which is the kind of the title of the book, and then subtitles Why We Must Be Pro-Abundant Life. And I encourage people to think about it that way, because candidly, when you look at the political narrative that so many people put so much time, talent, and treasure in, the reality is that the politics won't save us, and that we've got to take this issue, the life issue, and we've got to move it from the podium to the pulpit. And once we do that, then we'll start to see what we need to see, because the podium can lead us to the polls, but the pulpit leads us to the cross. And that's really where this issue is decided. It's a spiritual issue that has a political perspective, not a political issue that has some spiritual aspects to it. It's the other way around. So we're hopeful that folks will check out what we're doing. And I appreciate your support and your help over the years.
You bet. My pleasure. Roland, bless you. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for being on the program again. Take care.
Thank you.